So it's actually like 4 a.m. right now where I am, but I figured I wanted to record a video anyway, and I figured a great one would be these brackets people have been making for different bands to kind of like let songs fight each other out. It lets you talk about songs compared to each other you wouldn't normally think of. And this was created by a user on Reddit, SarioFF, and I'll give him credit in the description. This only has about 60 of Muse's 100 songs that you could potentially pick from. So there are plenty of songs missing here. Number 1 is Map of the Problematic or Problematique against Hypochondriac Music. And I think that one's pretty easy for me. Map of the Problematique's got to win there. Next is Undisclosed Desires versus Exogenesis Symphony. And it's weird because it doesn't actually have a specific part of Exogenesis that it's referencing. But in any case, it would still be pretty much any of the Exogenesis pieces would win against Undisclosed Desires for me. I actually really like Undisclosed Desires. Don't get me wrong, but Exogenesis is pretty amazing. And then Space Dementia versus Megalomania. This is even close. Like, Space Dementia is going to win every single time here. I think Megalomania is a good closer for the album, but it's not one of my favorites. Hysteria versus Madness was actually a really, really close one for me. I ended up picking Madness because I like how Hysteria stays pretty consistent throughout the whole song. The big crescendo is the solo, which is great. But Madness has like this slow, steady buildup that explodes with great vocal delivery and a really smooth guitar solo. So I put Madness above Hysteria. Sue me. Supermassive Black Hole versus Screenager. I actually really, really like Screenager, but despite Supermassive Black Hole being the popular one, it still had to win, definitely, for me. This one was really tough. Panic Station versus Resistance. They're two of, I think, Muse's best pop songs, or two of their better pop songs. But I had to pick Resistance because it was a little more ethereal, and again, it has more of a build-up. It's a little more epic. Panic Station stays pretty consistent throughout the runtime, though it has a fantastic guitar solo, and I love the horns in it. So, Resistance. Then we got Psycho versus The Handler. I mean, that's I really like Psycho, but that's still a pretty easy choice. And then Sunburn versus City of Delusion. This one was pretty close. I think Sunburn edged it out because I really like the post-chorus after the first chorus, and the bass line in the chorus I think is perfect. So it's one of the highlights off Showbiz. Let's see what I did now. I don't know where I went next. Okay, so I did the Exogenesis versus Map of the Problematique. On the first quadrant up here in the top left, I actually messed up the bracket a little bit, so this was supposed to go over here, but whatever. So Exogenesis, I think, is better than Map of the Problematique. It's more dynamic. Plus, it has 3 songs, and it's not even really a fair comparison, in my opinion. But if it was Symphony 3, it would definitely win. Symphony 2 would probably win. And I think Symphony 1, I would maybe say would lose to Map of the Problematique. But Space Dementia versus Madness, I really wanted to put Madness. But I didn't want you guys to kill me too hard. And I actually think the outro of Space Dementia is one of the best Muse moments, so I ended up putting it above Madness, just barely. Super close one there. Let's see, now we have Resistance versus Supermassive Black Hole. I think I picked Resistance, and I did up there first. So Exogenesis versus Space Dementia, I put Exogenesis above it. Again, it's not exactly that fair to have all 3, but if it was number 3 alone, it would still win for me. So put that there. Resistance above Supermassive Black Hole. I think it's slightly better. It's a pretty close one too. Handler is obviously going to win every time. So the Handler above the Resistance as well. And then the Handler is going to be above Exogenesis Symphony as well. Where do I go next? Okay, so after I started doing this for a while, I didn't make a new slide for every single song that I picked. So for some of them, it's just going to jump through them all, and then I'll talk about them afterwards. But when we get there, I'll mention that. MK Ultra vs. Cave. I think MK Ultra is actually one of Muse's most underrated songs. Somebody just posted on the subreddit them playing it live, and unfortunately the mix wasn't that great. But if it was mixed properly, it would have been one of their best live songs. Even in the studio version, when you have that pitched down vocals in the first, I don't even know how the song is structured. In that first part, we are losing control. That part that's like pitched down a ton, it sounds super robotic. It's one of the best production moments in their whole discography, in my opinion. And then it has a great outro. Cave is great too. I just think MK Ultra is a little bit better. Nature One, Stockholm Syndrome is an easy pick there. Then Plug-in Baby versus Butterflies and Hurricanes. When I first got into Muse, Butterflies and Hurricanes was one of my absolute favorites, but it kind of died out for me a little bit. I really like the middle section with the piano breakdown. I mean, who wouldn't? And the strings, those are all great. The drum part's great. Maybe it's because it doesn't have as much guitar as I'd like. I think I like the Glastonbury version more because there's some guitar in it. But it's a good song. But I think Plug-in Baby just edges it out a little bit. Fury versus Defector. Fury is easily much better in my opinion. Defector is one of the low points on Drones, I think. This was impossible. I cannot believe Animals versus Knights of Sidonia was here, because Animals is one of my top Muse songs. I might even put it in my top 10. I love the weird time signature, and I think it's their best bass line, as you guys saw in the top 15 or 16 Muse bass lines that I did. It has Matt's best guitar work. It has a great finale as well. But I think experiencing Knights of Sidonia live is probably what puts it on the top for me out of these two. If it was just the studio versions, I'd probably pick Animals, because I don't think the studio version of Knights is actually that great. There's some muddiness to it and that doesn't come across perfectly, but after you watch it live, either in a recording or actually being there, I mean, song's almost unbeatable. Dead Inside versus Dark Shines. This was another impossible one. I actually really like Dead Inside. I love the explosion in the second half. I think it has a great structure to it, great energy. But Dark Shines has one of the best Muse bass lines ever. And the bridge with the guitar solo is just beautiful. But I don't get as enthralled in the chorus of Dark Shines as I do with Dead Inside. I do in the last chorus of Dark Shines, to be fair, but I think Dead Inside overall I've listened to it more, I've enjoyed it more, just by a tiny bit. Dead Star versus Hyper Music, that's a good matchup there. I think overall Hyper Music actually might be a slightly better song, but I think the riff in Dead Star is better and more inspirational to me. I've played it so many times, playing along to them, doing that song. And the energy is just, it's weird. These are two of their most heavy, energetic tracks, so it's really hard to pick. They're both from around the same era too, but I ended up picking Dead Star just barely. Spiral Static versus Take a Bow. I actually didn't like either of these songs very much when I first heard them, but Take a Bow's really grown on me, especially with the outro. I think it starts to really explode towards the end. And as you've seen throughout my picks, I kind of like songs that are dynamic and that grow over the course of the song and build into something bigger. Spiral Static's not bad or anything. I haven't gone back to it that much, where I've gone back to Take a Bow a little bit more. Let's see, where do I go next? Okay, so Stockholm Syndrome versus MK Ultra. As much as I love MK Ultra, Stockholm Syndrome has to win there. Plug-in Baby versus Fury. I think Fury's been a grower for me. I didn't like it as much the first few times I've heard it, but after years of listening to it, the chorus where it starts to take off has started to give Plug-in Baby a run for its money, but as of right now, I think Plug-in Baby would be slightly higher just because of how dang catchy it is. Knights of Sidonia versus Dead Inside. Again, the live Knights of Sidonia just has to edge out almost everything. In a studio battle, it might be Dead Inside for me, but in this case, it's going to be Knights of Sidonia. Dead Star, Take a Bow, easily Dead Star. And then Stockholm Syndrome versus Plug-in Baby, again, pretty easy for me. Stockholm Syndrome by far. Knights of Sidonia versus Dead Star. This is pretty tough because taking into account the live Knights of Sidonia versus the live Dead Star, it's two of their absolute best songs live, so it was almost impossible to pick. I just barely ended up picking Knights. Man, put it this way. For those of you that pick Dead Star over Knights of Sidonia, if you hadn't heard Knights of Sidonia as a closer for every single live show, you probably would pick Knights of Sidonia. But because it's ended up being such a big hit, people are kind of sleeping on it a little bit, I think. And I want to give it the credit it really does deserve. Dead Star deserves a ton of credit too, and as you see, it made it pretty dang far in this list. But Knights of Sidonia just barely edged it out. And then out of those two, The Handler and Knights of Sidonia, it's always going to be The Handler. I think it's their best song ever by a long shot and my favorite song of all time. Follow Me versus United States of Eurasia. I really like both of these songs, but I think Follow Me might actually be one of Muse's absolute best ventures into anything electronic. They did get some help on the track from an EDM producer. I think it was Nero, if I'm right. I think the song builds up beautifully, and it's almost dark but hopeful at the same time, and those two together is just a great combo. It sounds like what EDM would be if it was fused with rock without the guitars. Like, it's basically a rock song with synths. It's just, I think it has a ton of energy. It's ominous, especially in the beginning when you have those cellos or those violins. And his voice, Matt's voice, is super deep on the song. It's a great track. I love United States of Eurasia. If this included Collateral Damage, which I know is not actually a Muse song, it's Chopin or however you pronounce it. That rendition, I think I would put slightly above Follow Me because the way it is played is better than almost any other performer I've seen play that particular classical piece. So I put Follow Me above it, just barely. Uno versus Muscle Museum, both are great. Uno's kind of almost like a slightly heavier version of Muscle Museum. The outro of Muscle Museum is pretty undeniable. So this is a tough one, but I did pick Uno because it has a little bit more of a Spanish influence, even though Muscle Museum has a tiny bit of one too. Uno just barely wins. Reapers versus Feeling Good. Reapers obviously should win that every time. Feeling Good is a great cover, but it's still a cover, and Reapers is one of their most intricate songs, rock songs they ever made. The Gallery, I think, is actually really underrated. As somebody in my Discord server mentioned it to me, and I went back to it and realized how beautiful that song really is. But Unintended is one of their best slow songs, so there's pretty much no way it can lose there. Agitated versus I Belong to You. I struggled so hard with this one. I was like, what in the world do I pick here? I know you guys are probably like, oh, it's obviously Agitated. But no, I mean, I Belong to You is just such a dang awesome song. I've never heard a song remotely similar to I Belong to You. I love the bass clarinet solo. I love the breakdown. I love the vocal melody. I love the bass line. Every single piece of this song is beautiful, except for his pronunciation of French, which I did not know until people drew to my attention. But I think I ended up picking Agitated just because it ended up inspiring some of my own music more than I Belong to You, if I'm correct. Oh, I actually didn't pick. If you check here, I didn't pick, and I went to the other songs because it was stressing me out so much I couldn't do it. Map of Your Head versus Easily. So I'll go back. I don't remember what I picked, honestly. Map of Your Head versus Easily. I think Easily wins. Blackout versus Glorious. I think Blackout is phenomenal. So Ruled by Secrecy versus Can't Take My Eyes Off You. I think Can't Take My Eyes Off You is their second best cover, probably, after Feeling Good. I think it's great. But Ruled by Secrecy is one of their best songs, so it's obviously going to win. See if I went back and did this decision. Okay, so I ended up picking Agitated like I thought. I think when I first was doing this decision, I thought it was Ashamed, not Agitated. I always get those two like mixed up in my head. Like I know which one is which, but I just read them wrong or something. I don't know. But like I said, I thought about it again, and Agitated was more inspirational on my own original music, like Throne of Glass. I didn't even know at the time, but after I wrote it, I was like, wait, this sounds like Agitated, exactly. It's like, dang it. But I had to give it some credit there for that. So between Follow Me and Uno, Uno wins. It's probably because I'm a little bit biased here. I just love the Spanish influence on any of Muse's songs. I love Spanish chord progressions, Spanish guitar parts, Spanish bass lines. Oh, it's just beautiful. Unintended vs. Reapers. Reapers is just a monster song. I mean, it's tough to beat with a ballad. Agitated vs. Easily. I mean, well, let's put it this way. If you're talking live version, I think Agitated wins. Studio version, I would pick Easily. But because Agitated is like a highly requested live song and they've been doing it in the requested shows, I think it's fair to count the live version here and give Agitated a little bit of a boost. Blackout versus Ruled by Secrecy is really tough. Not because it's hard to decide necessarily, but because it sucks to have to kick out Blackout. It's just such a great song. Uno versus Reapers, I think Reapers wins that easily. Ruled by Secrecy should win that easily too against Agitated. All right, and then Ruled by Secrecy, I think, is, again, one of their best songs ever. So just barely edges out Reapers. Mercy, I think, is kind of like a slightly worse version of Starlight. I do like it. I like the bridge a lot. I like the bass line. There's a lot of energy, and seeing it live is great. But Invincible has one of their best solos. It has a great chord progression. It's just a great song to listen to. It was one of the most inspirational ones when I was first getting into them. Newborn versus Citizen Erased. This is like ridiculously easy for me. I like Citizen Erased, but Newborn is like one of the best songs I've ever heard, in my opinion. So it's easily Newborn. Citizen Erased has great moments, don't get me wrong. Newborn is just on another level, in my opinion. Shrinking Universe versus Showbiz. I think Shrinking Universe might be the best track off of Hullabaloo, but Showbiz is just, that was like their first foray into the epic. I can't say enough about Showbiz, especially live. Globalist versus Time Is Running Out. Globalist should take that easily. Globalist is not as good as it could have been, but if you compare the songwriting in Time Is Running Out, I mean, come on. It's a beautiful song. Escape versus Bliss. I really love the backing vocals in Escape, but Bliss is one of the best intros ever in music. Exopolitics versus Unnatural Selection. Unnatural Selection should easily win that every time. So I think it's criminally underrated. Exopolitics has a great solo and a great chorus, but Unnatural Selection has a great breakdown. I love the breakdown. It has like a cool, heavy guitar part, and then it has a guitar solo as well in the breakdown alone. And then there's a whole like outro guitar solo that's also great. It's just a great song. Shine versus Assassin. To be honest, I'm not that familiar with Shine. I've only heard it a couple times, but Assassin is phenomenal live. Again, with some of these tracks, I'm giving them the credit of the live version because I just love the live version so much. Like the Assassin live at the Mayan is one of Muse's best live performances. So now we got Invincible versus Newborn. That's easy. Newborn. Globalist versus Showbiz. This was actually really tough. Barely picked the Globalist. I think I'm giving a little bit more credit to the songs that have more in them, because if, let's say there's a minute and a half great song, like you could say Soldier's Poem, for example, and you compare that to a song like The Globalist, it's hard to compare a 2-minute song to a 10-minute song that has so much more effort that went into it. So The Globalist is going to edge out Showbiz there, but it might not be because it's necessarily a better song on its own. I just appreciate it more. Then Bliss versus Unnatural Selection is easily Unnatural Selection for me. And Assassin versus Explorers. Explorers, I think, is, again, one of their best slow songs. And I know I've said that for a lot. I mean, they have a decent amount of slow songs. They have like 15 to 20 slower songs. So the ones that I've picked, like Ruled by Secrecy, Explorers, Blackout, all those slower songs that I've mentioned, those are the few that I think are actually their best. Like, I'm not just saying that for every slow one that comes up. Then we have Newborn versus The Globalist. Should be Newborn every time. And then Explorers versus Unnatural Selection was really, really, really hard. But I barely picked Explorers because of how much it takes me to another world when I listen to it, where Unnatural Selection takes me to another emotional level, perhaps, a more energized level. It's more fun to play along to on the guitar. It has different qualities. I think it is equally as good as Explorers, but perhaps my personal preference has led Explorers to be slightly above. And then I actually even had Explorers beat Newborn, which is probably heresy for some of you. So I have like a slow song battle here on the bottom half of the bracket. So who do you guys think is going to win? Ruled by Secrecy or Explorers? It's a tough one. But I had to go with Ruled by Secrecy because of the crescendo at the end. I love the chord progression at the end. I love the chord progression throughout the whole song. I love the production throughout the whole song. I think it might be produced slightly better than Explorers. Explorers is great, but Ruled by Secrecy has to win there. So it all comes down to the final matchup. Ruled by Secrecy versus The Handler. And everybody already knows who's going to win if you know my channel at all. But who's going to win? Oh yeah, look at this mouse going crazy. It's The Handler. I mean, come on. It's always The Handler. The Handler is their best song ever made, and it is the best song in the history of music. So The Handler wins. I wish there was a couple of these other songs in here that I really wish we could have, had a chance to rank, like Survival or Supremacy. All right, so that was a fun video, guys. Thanks for watching, and like and subscribe for more. See you later.